They say money changes everything, but on Meridian Flight 219, money nearly got its own wake-up call. In the first 3 sentences, a 19-year-old in a battered hoodie slides into the most coveted seat on the plane a senior flight attendant decides who belongs and who doesn't. And a billionaire's private jet is about to park itself like an exclamation point across the runway. Yeah, that happened. That. Act 1. The setup. Smallness in a big cabin. The cabin smells like polish and filtered air. The kind of smell that signals this is not your world, and there are 8 private suites up front where people tuck themselves away from the rest of humanity. Zoe Williams is not built for secrecy. She walks like someone who's been on her feet for 12 hours. Hair-messy headphones slung like an armor. A backpack so worn the leather has its own map of past lives. She's got a ticket in her hand that says Suite 1A. Zoe Williams in embossed gold, but in the eyes of some folks her hoodie is louder than that foil strip. At the entrance stands Linda Avery. Polished, precise, 23 years in the sky, the kind of person who learned to read status the way others read faces. Linda narrows her eyes when she sees Zoe, and something in her brain clicks intrusion detected. "Excuse me," Linda says. Voice honey with a blade. "First class is this way. I think you might be in the wrong cabin." Zoe, tired and steady, lifts her boarding pass and says, "I'm in 1A. That should have been it. A blink and a return to oxygen masks and peanuts, but the cabin is a delicate ecosystem and a single pebble can become an avalanche. A man in 2A, Charles Whitman, a hedge fund guy with a tie that looks like it cost 2 months of rent, folds his paper eyes cold. "This kid's in first. Get her out of here," he snaps. As murmurs ripple, Linda decides to enforce order. She steps in, she pulls Zoe's headphones, she suggests not politely, not kindly that Zoe move to row 37 because a valued customer is waiting. Zoe is calm but firm. "I paid for this seat. I'm sitting here." The physicality arrives. A hand on a shoulder, a shove that's just enough to say who's in charge. Zoe freezes the camera of her mind already recording. "Don't touch me," she whispers, and it's the kind of quiet that makes people take sides without knowing why. Act 2. The pivot. The call. The jet. The playing field flips. Zoe pulls out her phone, dials one number, a quick speed dial. On the other end is Marcus Hale, founder of Hale Aviation, who built his company from a one-truck operation into a private aviation empire who believes in people learning the lay of the land by walking it. Dad Zoe says. She holds the phone out to Linda, whatever she expects to happen, small or giant. Linda, with a sniff, takes the phone like a prop, prepares the lecture, then lands into a trap of her own making. She starts explaining how Zoe is disruptive, how she's being moved for safety and the good of paying customers, and hangs up on him. Now, picture this: 3 miles away, a black-trimmed, long-range business jet rolls out of a private hangar and parks its belly like a boulder across the taxiway. It's not a casual blocking. It's deliberate, a matte-painted global that reads Hale 1 on the tail. Escalades with tinted windows screech across the tarmac, not sirens, but swagger, and Marcus Hale steps onto that jet bridge like someone who owns the weather. He doesn't explode, he doesn't raise his voice, he moves through the cabin and the doors close behind him like the lid on a very expensive box. He shows Linda the footage. Zoe's hands the pull, the shove. He asks in a voice so even it makes people lean in, "Who touched my daughter?" Everything in the cabin changes temperature. The CEO of Meridian, patched live on the cabin screen, goes pale when Marcus shows him the recording and the audio. He's the guy who runs the airline, and suddenly he's the one being told what to fix. Marcus doesn't want to humiliate someone for sport, but he's not naive. He's built rules into deals, and when someone breaks the law in plain sight, he'll use whatever tool is at his disposal. He turns to the CEO and says, "Either you remove those two, the purser who assaulted her and the passenger who instigated this, or Hale 1 stays right where it is." The man in 2A, Charles Whitman, who minutes before was puffing about champagne and mergers, finds his credit card declining like a magic trick gone wrong. Marcus quietly surgical invoked contract clauses a freeze on credit instruments tied to Whitman's assets, not because he loves spectacle, but because sometimes power speaks in accounting. Act 2 is electric because it's not just force, it's public exposure. Marcus beams the recorded feed to the cabin screens. The audio plays crystal clear, and you can see Linda's trained civility crack. "I was following protocol," she says, reaching for the old justification. Zoe's video says otherwise. Zoe was calm when provoked, factual when insulted. And in those small moments, she was the one holding a kind of dignity that none of the others could buy. Act 3. The payoff. Fallout choices and an open question. What happens next is messy and satisfying in equal parts. Linda is relieved of duty, an immediate dismissal called over the intercom by a CEO who has no choice left. Charles Whitman, stripped of instant access funds, is escorted off the aircraft not by humiliation alone, but by the cold practicality of frozen accounts and reputational collapse. People who once clinked glasses in first class now glance at their phone screens and realize their status can evaporate in the time it takes to send an email. Zoe. She walks down the jetway and Marcus meets her halfway with her battered backpack slung over his shoulder, a billionaire carrying a worn bag like it's the single most important thing he owns that day. He hands her back the ripped headphones. She takes them without fanfare. There's a moment in the air between them. Not celebratory, not theatrical, just a father and daughter who went through something that ruptured the easy stories either of them tells about life. On Marcus's jet, the contrast is obvious but quiet. Hot chocolate made the way Zoe likes it a towel, a seat that folds into a cot, and a conversation about why he makes her walk the city streets, take subways, do internships under other names. He wanted her to understand the world from the ground up, not to harden her, but to arm her with perspective. Zoe's reply is dry and small. "I felt invisible." He says, "Good. Now you know," and you stood. But the ending doesn't snap into neatness. Linda's life is upended. She loses pension eligibility, she faces a lawsuit, and the recording that will be replayed in platforms and newsrooms follows her like a shadow. Charles's empire trembles. Maybe it survives, maybe it's restructured, but his social currency has been cratered. The airline's CEO loses face and gains a reprimand from his board, and the cabin full of travelers gets a lesson they didn't ask for in front of snacks and spilled champagne. Here's the part that will keep the comments rolling. Marcus used his wealth in a way that looks like justice to some and like vigilantism to others. He weaponized money to correct an insult, and the line between righteous protection and disproportionate punishment blurs fast. Did he overreach by freezing Whitman's accounts by firing Linda on the spot? Or did he do exactly what needed to be done because the system had already failed Zoe? This story is not tidy. It's raw, it's complicated, and that's the point. The kid in the hoodie didn't shout, didn't swing. She stood, and that composure made a bigger noise than anyone expected. The woman in uniform didn't start out cruel. She started out as a product of a system that trains people to defend customer comfort at almost any cost. The billionaire. He's a father who chose to make the plane his courtroom. So where do you land? Do you feel the hot, satisfying pulse of karma when someone who uses privilege to humiliate gets his own privileges checked? Or does it make you uneasy that a man with money can decide a person's fate with a phone call and a ledger entry? Is this justice, or is it power policing? Power. If this hit you, if you felt angry, relieved, unnerved, or inspired, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, did Marcus go too far, or did he do what needed doing? Have you ever seen someone judged because of how they looked, and did anyone step up? Share your story. Push back. Argue. I read every comment, and I want this to be a conversation about dignity, about accountability, and about whether our systems protect the people who need it most. If this story made you think hit, share it with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe so we can keep unpacking moments like this together.